The dog stayed at his master's grave for several days, and when people finally found out the reason, they were shocked to the core. Funerals are always a very sad ceremony, both for people and for the deceased's pets, who are usually taken away by relatives or given to a shelter so that they can find their new home. However, this time everything happened in a completely different way. A German shepherd named Cooper served in the police department from a young age. Here the dog met his future guide, 32-year-old Officer John, who at that time had served in the police department for only 2 years. The man and the dog quickly found a common language and worked well together, complementing and supporting each other. John became so attached to Cooper that he took him to his home to personally take care of the four-legged pet. From that day on, the policeman and his shaggy friend not only served faithfully together every day, but also happily returned home together after a hard day's work. One evening, the dispatcher informed all police officers on the radio about the attempted robbery. The criminals tried to steal money and valuables from an apartment building, but they were scared off by the owner who appeared. John was the closest to the crime scene and immediately rushed to the call. The policeman managed to notice how 2 robbers were hiding in the nearby forest. The rest of the patrol cars were still on the way, so John was the only one who could stop the fleeing criminals. The policeman let Cooper out of the car and ordered him to pick up the trail of the robbers, and he ran after him. Soon John heard the voices of criminals nearby, which made him pull his gun out of its holster and order the dog to sit on the ground, waiting for his next command. After a few meters, the policeman saw the silhouette of the criminal and ordered him to stop. The villain froze in place, and John took out handcuffs, intending to arrest him. At that moment, the policeman felt a sharp pain in his right side. It was the second robber who suddenly appeared and stabbed him. Hearing the owner's scream, Cooper boldly rushed at the criminal with a knife and forced him to drop the weapon to the ground. The second villain barely managed to free his accomplice from the powerful mouth of the dog by hitting him with a large tree branch. After that, both villains hurried to hide in the woods, hearing the howl of approaching police sirens nearby. Panting after the blow, Cooper hurried to the owner, who was moaning softly, bleeding. The dog started barking loudly to attract the attention of the police officers who had just reached the forest. Thanks to this, the police quickly found the seriously injured John and took him to the hospital. Unfortunately, the wound turned out to be too serious, and he died right on the operating table. After the death of the owner, the faithful dog curled up in a corner and did not react in any way to the commands of the dog handlers. The police thought it would be best to hand over the grieving dog to John's family, who would surely be able to bring it back to life. All his colleagues and comrades from the police department gathered at John's funeral. Cooper was also present at the sad ceremony. When the coffin began to be lowered into the ground, the dog howled loudly, as if calling on his master to come back and hug him tightly, like in the good old days. After the funeral, the sad widow Emma noticed that Cooper had disappeared somewhere. The woman guessed to return to the grave of her husband, where the dog lay curled up. Emma tried for a long time to persuade Cooper to go home with her, but he flatly refused to obey and did not move from his place. As a result, the woman decided to leave the pet alone and returned for him the next morning. But nothing has changed. Cooper was determined to stay at the grave of his beloved master. As the weeks passed, the dog seemed to settle on John's grave, only fleeing somewhere for a short time for a reason he alone knew. Emma constantly came to the cemetery to bring fresh food and water to the faithful dog. One day, his friend and colleague Eaton came to John's grave. Seeing a uniformed policeman he knew, Cooper became active for the first time in a long time. He started barking loudly and running around the policeman, as if trying to tell him something. Finally, Ethan realized that the dog was asking him to follow him. Seeing the dog's strong concern, the man took out a pistol just in case and ran after the dog rushing somewhere. After a few kilometers, Cooper became incredibly aggressive for no apparent reason and rushed at some man, who collapsed to the ground in surprise. His companion, seeing this, wanted to kick the dog with his foot, but Ethan arrived, threatening him with a pistol, ordered him to put his hands behind his head and lie down on the ground. Ethan arrested both men and took them to the police station, where it turned out that these were the robbers who killed John. After apprehending dangerous criminals, Cooper returned to the grave of his master and whined loudly, as if he had let his dead comrade know that he had fulfilled his promise to deal with his killers. When Emma came to the cemetery once again, Cooper agreed to go home with her and finally recognized the woman as his mistress. Emma was happy to take care of her faithful and brave pet and took it with her every time she went to her husband's grave. Dear viewers, if you liked this video, then like and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye.